June 22nd, 1938, Yankee Stadium in New York City. 70,000 people were in the stands. 70 million more Americans were leaning close to their radios at home. In one corner, a German prize fighter that the Nazi propaganda machine had turned into a poster boy. Living proof, they claimed, of a master race. And in the other corner, the son of Alabama sharecroppers, a black man asked to carry the hopes of a country that still made him right in the back of the bus. The bell rings, and 2 minutes and 4 seconds later, it's over. And in Berlin, the radio goes dead because the Reich couldn't bear to let Germany hear how it had ended. That wasn't just a prize fight. That was America stepping into the ring. And this past weekend on the south lawn of the White House, America stepped right back into it. This last weekend, tens of thousands of fans gathered on the south lawn of the White House, the People's House, and in the surrounding areas on the National Mall to watch the best fighters in the world go blow for blow. Lightweights and heavyweights in an octagon under a steel canopy that they called the Claw on the 250th birthday of this nation and the 80th birthday of our president. Some folks, they called it unorthodox, but I'm going to call it about as American as it gets. I spent the better part of 2 decades in uniform around men and women who train their bodies and steel their minds to step into the hardest moments and not flinch. So when I watch 2 fighters walk into the center of a ring with nothing but their will and their skill, I don't see a spectacle. I see something that's deeply and distinctly American. Going back more than a century, American fighters have been some of the finest examples of our character on the world stage. Boxing doesn't begin and end with Rocky Balboa running up the museum steps in Philadelphia. In 1919, as the First World War closed and America stepped onto the world stage as a great power, a kid that they called the Manasseh Mauler, Jack Dempsey, he punched his way to the heavyweight championship of the world. And 2 years later, in a wooden stadium thrown up across the river in New Jersey, Dempsey, he fought a French war hero, Georges Carpentier. More than 80,000 people came to see that fight live. It was the first $1 million gate in the history of sports. And in a decade of giants of Babe Ruth and Jim Thorpe, Dempsey stood as the very picture of American strength. But if you want the story that gives me chills, it's Joe Louis, hands down. Again, he was born to sharecroppers in Alabama. His family was carried north in the Great Migration to the assembly lines of Detroit, and on his shoulders, he carried the whole weight of the African-American experience, the struggle and the promise, both of them. In 1936, a German fighter named Max Schmeling found a flaw in young Joe Louis, and he knocked him out cold. It was the only blemish actually on Joe Louis's record, and it ate at him. And the next year, Joe Louis knocked out James Braddock to become the heavyweight champion of the world. He was the first black man to wear that crown in a generation. But Joe wasn't satisfied. He said, "I am not a champion until I beat Schmeling." And then the world was sliding into war again. And in the days before the rematch, Joe Louis was called to the White House, where President Franklin Roosevelt reportedly grabbed his arm and told him, "Joe, we need muscles like yours to beat Germany." And on June 22nd, 1938, 1 year to the day after he won the title, Joe Louis defended it against Schmeling at Yankee Stadium. And he didn't just win. He ended it in 124 seconds. In many ways, it was the first American victory of a war that our GIs would finish 3 years later. Now, here's the part that makes it more than a fight. Max Schmeling was never a Nazi. He refused to join the party. He kept his Jewish American manager against direct orders, and months after that fight during the Kristallnacht, he risked his own life and hid 2 Jewish boys from the Gestapo. After the war, he and Joe Louis became friends. Schmeling sent him money when Louis fell on hard times. He helped pay for his funeral. He served as one of the pallbearers. 2 men that the world had cast as enemies turned out to be better than the flags that they fought under. And Joe Louis carried a country that hadn't yet decided to carry him. He fought under a flag that still segregated him. And he made every American, black and white, rise to their feet and cheer. That's the thing about American exceptionalism. It was never a boast that we'd already arrived as a great nation. It was a picture of what a great nation looks like, pulling us forward, even when we weren't yet ready to live up to it. Joe Louis held that ideal up in his 2 fists, and he went on to the longest title reign in the history of boxing, almost 12 years, 25 defenses. It's a record across every weight class that has never been broken. In the 1960s and 70s, the names come one after another: Sonny Liston and Joe Frazier and George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. the fight of the century, the thrill in Manila, the rumble in the jungle, names that sound like legend because they were. And Ali, he gave us something more. The power married with principle. He gave up his title. He faced prison rather than fighting a war that he couldn't square in his own conscience. You don't have to agree with every choice that the man made to respect somebody willing to pay that price for what he believed. Folks, that's American too. And since the turn of this century, the UFC and mixed martial arts have taken up the torch and in a lot of ways replacing boxing in the popular imagination. But underneath, it's the same thing. Determination, raw power, discipline, and the hard-earned skill that ties it all together. The best of what we admire in a fighter is the best of what we admire in a free people. I won't argue with baseball for the title of America's pastime. Baseball is my passion, and my Atlanta Braves, they're back on top and giving me a lot to cheer about these days. But I will tell you this. I can't think of anything more fitting than throwing open the gates of the People's House on our 250th birthday and letting the whole world watch Americans do what we have always done. Step into the ring, look the moment dead in the eye, and refuse to back down. Liberty, it is our legacy. Let's be worthy of it. God bless America and happy 250th.